name is Thais Gibson.
Thais Gibson.
Thais Gibson.
Thais Gibson.
Thais Gibson.
Thais Gibson.
I hope I pronounce her name properly. Thais Gibson.
I am so excited for you to be here with me today. Thank you for joining us. Welcome back to another episode of Can This Be Fixed with myself and our amazing co-host, Mike DeZio. Today, we are going to talk about a whole bunch of different things. We are going to discuss how to reconnect or sort of reattract an avoidant attachment style after a breakup and what that reconnection phase should really look like. And as you know, you've been listening to these episodes for the last little while. I was a fearful avoidant for my whole upbringing until my early 20s when I really started to do the work. And Mike was a dismissive avoidant. And so we really work hard to share personal experiences on this podcast, the inside world of different things we experienced when we were fearful avoidant and dismissive avoidant, the journey to becoming secure. And you probably noticed that we usually share funny dating stories or personal shares at the end of podcast episodes. But we are going to try today actually kicking off with this first and then diving into user questions on our Can This Be Fixed Reddit thread second. So we're going to share today a little bit about what it was like being a dismissive avoidant or fearful avoidant, and how would you show somebody when you first met them that you were interested in them? And also, how quickly would you generally move through the different stages of relationships? Now, if you're not familiar, there are 6 major stages of relationships, and this is based off of the work of Dr. Susan Johnson. And we start with the dating stage. The dating stage is the vetting stage in relationships. It's when we're supposed to really get to know somebody and see, am I a good fit for their life, but are they a good fit for mine too? Then, if we decide that we want to make some sort of commitment to somebody, we then move into the honeymoon stage. And that will last maybe a year and a half from the time that the dating stage ends. Then every single relationship, if it makes it this far, goes into the power struggle stage, where statistically most relationships end. But it's also a great opportunity for us in that stage to start to really drop the mask, get to know somebody more deeply, learn their fears, their flaws, move the needle essentially from more conditionally based love in the earlier stages to more unconditionally based love. And if we make it through the power struggle stage, we eventually move into the stability, then commitment, and then bliss stage, which is really like the honeymoon stage, except you truly deeply know each other. So we're going to talk about how quickly you'd move through these stages as the attachment style that you were, and maybe share a personal story about a time we moved really fast, a time we moved really slow. And then we will dive into, in the second part of the Can This Be Fixed episode, how you can reconnect with an avoidant attachment style, what that process looks like, and what are some really important things to watch out for. Just a reminder, check us out on Spotify, Apple, iTunes, wherever you listen to us. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe or leave a review. So Mike, I'll let you kick this off here. Do you have any particular story about how you would show somebody you were interested in them when you were dating them, when you were a dismissive avoidant attachment style? And also, how quickly you would tend to move if you really like somebody or if you weren't sure if it was a good fit?
Yeah, for sure. So I remember a lot of times in dating, I would almost, when I'd meet someone, I would tell them right away, like, hey, I'm not really looking for anything serious right now. Like, I can only offer, casual. There's a lot of things I'm working on in my life right now. So I would almost lead out with like, don't get any ideas that this is going to become like super close and super intense and long-term relationship. And I think it was more of a protection thing, but that is what it is. And then the people would usually be like, oh, okay, well, yeah, let's see what happens here. Let's go on some dates.
Would you do that even if you were like maybe super interested in somebody, like you were like 9 or 10 out of 10 interested and you knew like, wow, I really think this person's amazing, but I would still do that anyways?
I think I would still do it anyways. I think it was just like at the time, like feeling unhealed and probably not feeling like I'd even show up well in a relationship. I would just kind of give that as a caveat.
Yeah.
And
Definitely self-protection then. You can hear
yeah,
it's like very like, makes a lot of
yeah, for sure, for sure. So then I think then slowly, like if I start to like the person and I start to think, wow, like this person is pretty cool and like I actually feel like really comfortable with this person, they might notice me start to do like little thoughtful things. So, I'll pay attention. Maybe they mentioned they love red velvet cupcakes. So then maybe one time when I go to see them, I'll bring them a red velvet cupcake. So I think it's probably confusing for them because at first I said, I don't want anything serious, casual, which means like, I'm not going to invest all this care and emotion. But then I start doing these little like gestures where I think they're kind of like, okay, that's sort of not really
mixed
in line.
messages for something casual.
Exactly. And I'm even embarrassed saying this right now. I feel embarrassed sharing this with you just because I could see how it would be like confusing for someone.
But it's also
Um,
like so like that's the whole part of this is that it's like unpacking like what we do with our wounds and we all have different things that we do when we're wounded, when we're afraid. And so I think it's just really helping to shed light on this for people and give more context. I think
yeah.
it's amazing.
Right, right. Yeah, totally. Okay. I don't feel too embarrassed anymore. But, actually, the embarrassing part is that, okay, sometimes then I would sort of start to melt and become more warmer with the person. And I think they notice like, I'm messaging more. I'm wanting to initiate plans and hangouts more. Um, yeah, they can just feel it. They're like, this guy's totally not, what he said he was before. And I think they could see that it was a protection mechanism. So it's just those, small things, gestures and spending time and things like that. However, this is the part that I'm not proud of, that sometimes I still in my mind was like, this is going nowhere. I just want this to be casual. Like, I don't want to go into a relationship with this person. However, I would still sort of treat them like they were the one and only, like they were somebody who I wanted to build something long term with. So they would think, oh, this must be going towards that because he's acting this way and he's giving me a lot of attention. And it feels like we're connecting quite well. But then a lot of times, maybe after like the 2 month mark or so, they would want to revisit that conversation and be like, hey, I know you said in the beginning you just want a casual. Well, we've been hanging out quite a bit now and spending a lot of time together. And, I think I'm going to need more of a commitment in order to move forward. And then I would go back and kind of say, oh, like, do you remember that initial conversation we had? Like, I really meant that. Like, I don't want anything serious.
Can I
And
ask you a
then,
question for a
yeah,
second? Sorry to interrupt you. Do you feel like it was because you kind of had these like split parts of yourself, like almost this aspect of self that like was developing feelings and wanted that closeness and connection, but ultimately the bigger part of yourself was just still in self-protection? Like, what are you internally experiencing when you're going through that? Is it like, oh, I just want my freedom and I don't care? Or is it like, you really look at it, it's sort of like, well, actually, I'm developing feelings and I do care and I am warming up to this person, but I'm just still too afraid.
I wish it was that. You know what it is? This is gonna sound terrible, but I want you to know I've done a lot of healing, and I would never do this to anyone ever again. I knew in my mind, I thought there's someone better out there for me. There's someone maybe better looking. We'd get along better. Like there was just all these things that I thought were better. However, I was enjoying the physical aspects at the time, having some connection, having somebody to hang out with, be friends with. But sort of in the back of my mind, I knew like, I don't think this is someone that I want to be boyfriend girlfriend with, and it's just not going to happen.
Okay, I have to ask something else because I'm so curious about this. So would
Yeah.
that be, if you look at it more deeply too, would that be because you were in a place where it was like you would flaw find out of self-protection, and so you would think, oh, this person isn't the perfect fit? Like something for anybody who's listening who's not familiar, one thing that's really common for dismissive avoidance in particular is they look for like the perfect fit, like the perfect person.
Mm.
Because if you feel disempowered to resolve conflict or to leave something once you're in it and you think you're going to be trapped, or you think that like I don't know how to work through things and make conflicts or differences make us stronger, instead it feels like everything's a wall between yourself and somebody else, then you end up in a scenario where you're like, you just flatline. Nobody's ever perfect. And so your way of trying to avoid having to deal with those things that feel unsolvable is to just find perfection. Would you find yourself doing that in those stages as you would develop feelings? Or is it the background belief that you always carry into relationships? Like there's always someone else out there.
That was sort of the background belief in the past. Obviously now I know there's no such thing. I'm not perfect. No one else is perfect. Like it's just
You've done like so much work now, but it's so interesting to hear like in the past from that standpoint.
Yeah, it's such an unrealistic expectation, and it'll keep you single and alone for your whole life because you're not accepting yourself unconditionally. So then you're projecting that out onto someone else. So because I was doing that, I was always keeping people far away and like at arm's length, and in my mind saying this is not going anywhere. I'm not going to introduce them to my friends. I'm not going to introduce them to my family. This is just going to be, enjoying the moment. And I thought that was okay because I gave the caveat in the beginning. But what I later realized was it was very hurtful because you can tell someone something with your words, but that if you're acting a different way and giving them love and care and your time and your energy and whatnot, that's saying a completely different message that can be taken a lot more powerfully than the words. So yeah, for anyone out there, like it's not a good thing to do. Like it's really hurtful, and you should tell people where they stand and where you stand. And then the person can decide for themselves. That's just basic sort of self-respect, basic respect for the other person. So
these are such great shares. You're so vulnerable. I have to just admire, like you would never know you were once a DA because you're so vulnerable and like taking such radical ownership and accountability for those things that I think are honestly quite common for a lot of people in situations, right? Like stuff that people naturally, this isn't like, you're not the only person that probably did things like that. That's probably one in every 2 or 3 people. Now, question 2, if you had to go back looking at yourself in the past, knowing what you know now, would you have done how would you have amended that? Because what are you supposed to do? Like only ever date somebody if you're 100% ready? Do you think that instead a solution would have been something like, constantly remind the person, sure, you don't have to necessarily like withhold or withdraw love and care, but maybe just keep reminding the person like, hey, I know I'm being very caring, but I really am clear about where I stand. I just want to manage your expectations and have it be more of a repeated theme. Or would you have actually tried to like keep the person at arm's length the whole time? Like what would you do differently?
Yeah, just constant communication and like maybe checking in every few weeks to see how it's going for both of us. Are you still enjoying this? Is it still beneficial for both of us? And yeah, I don't know. That's tough to say because, would I like not be so loving and caring and thoughtful? Would I just like turn that off?
Yeah.
Or would I sort of just verbally say, hey, like keep on reminding the person, hey, like this is just casual. I don't know. Like now I'm not into casual relationships. I don't think they benefit me anymore. So that's why I think it's kind of hard to put myself in that mind. I know I was doing it before, just sort of stay safe, if I was by myself, no one can hurt me. And it kept me sort of in a little bit more of a power position where the person couldn't hurt me and they weren't sort of holding my heart in their hand.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I do, but honestly, I really just find it much more satisfying now to like kind of either be all in with someone or all out. That sort of middle ground is, I don't know. It's just
what if somebody is a DA right now listening and they're like, okay, I get what Mike's saying. It makes perfect sense. Wow, that's amazing that Mike like has grown through that and is like so openly expressing that and putting maybe what I'm feeling in my own inner world into words. But I'm not ready for something serious. What if somebody's still at that point? Or maybe, somebody just got out of a relationship that was, maybe they're getting divorced after 15 years and they don't want to just stay totally single, but they don't want to hurt somebody either. Like for me, the advice that I see is to keep managing expectations each week, even to say, hey, I notice that I'm doing thoughtful things and it's because I do care about you and I do have feelings, but my feelings for you can grow, and where I'm at personally can still be in the same place. And ultimately, that's what's going to be deciding how I'm feeling about my ability to be in a relationship. And so I just want to be reminding you and be mindful to manage your expectations from a place of care. Like that's the best thing I can think of. Is there anything else that you would add to somebody who is going through that right now?
Just to know, like, there's so many different types of connections out there, and I think you'd be surprised to know how many people are looking for the exact same thing that you're looking for. So from the avoidant perspective, I think we feel a lot of shame and negative self-judgment that we don't always want this traditional relationship, or sort of what was shown to us on media and shows and all that. Meaning, like, you're supposed to spend all your time with the person, and you have to live with them, and you have to see them every day of the week. I really think the more radically honest you are with yourself on how much you want to spend in the relationship, how much you want to spend on your hobbies, on different areas of life, instead of hiding that and feeling shameful, and even worse, trying to fit yourself into a box that doesn't fit you, you're gonna create problems, and you're gonna create, your own suffering, and you're kind of gonna be living a lie. So radical honesty. And I know you think, oh, nobody's ever gonna accept what I'm needing right now. Not true. The more you share exactly what you want, who you are, the right people are gonna come and enter your life and appreciate that. It's not to say like somebody else might want something totally opposite, and then of course that won't work. But maybe you want this, where it's like, oh, I want to see someone 3 times a week, and somebody's like, oh, well, 4 times a week is more what I'm hoping for. You can come to a middle ground there. That's not too hard. But to think like you have to hide what you really want and then try to go 100% to the opposite direction for someone, you're just setting yourself up for breakup and failure and whatnot. So any advice, for the DAs out there, avoidant types, just be very, very honest with who you are and what you want in a relationship, and don't feel shame and guilt for it, because, nobody wants you to show up half-assed. If you can show up 100% being yourself, let the people know what that looks like, and then they have the decision whether they want to take it or leave it.
And I love that so much, because all I'm hearing as you're saying it is it's a form of exposure work, right? Like it's literally going, okay, I'm going to vulnerably show who I truly am, what I truly need, what I'm truly hoping for in a relationship. And so you're being vulnerable in that process. And that's actually a form of exposure work, which is one of the tools we promote in PDS all the time as a form of healing that's particularly relevant to DAs. And so it's like you get to move that needle in realizing, oh, my needs, my wants, my boundaries, they're not shameful. And actually, they're worthy of acceptance and communication if I can be open and honest and communicate. And so over time, you actually get to see that the right people will come towards you and appreciate those things, which actually in turn starts to heal the avoidant attachment style and create more availability for the relationship.
Right. And I want to ask you, like, how do you bypass, or what do you think is the quickest way to bypass that self-acceptance? Because I know as a species, we're wired for acceptance. From what I understood, before, if you weren't accepted by your family or by the tribe, you're pretty much dead, right? So if we have families that want us to be a certain way, or we have a friendship group that expects us to be a certain way, and, have relationships the way that they have them, what do you think is the best way to sort of bypass that and be like, you know what? I need to do what's best for me, even if it's against my friends and family's wishes.
I love that. I think that there's a couple of things. I think number one, you want to actually do work on the shame wound, because a lot of times, like, people have families that can be like shaming, but when you have a shame wound because of that, and then it's a part of like your deeply embedded programming, and you don't ever work to recondition it using like auto suggestion or some of the different tools we have in PDS, well, now everything that may be a molehill, we're going to turn into a mountain. Like everything that we think, oh, somebody gave us a little of a hard time about the boundary, we're like, oh, they're shaming my soul. Like they're shaming me to my core and everything about who I am, instead of like, oh, they just didn't like that behavior, or they disagreed with this like pattern or whatever it might be. And so I think that's a first really big piece. The second piece is when you're no longer shaming yourself all the time and you don't have that shame wound, you're not going to take things as personally when people have an issue or give you criticism or feedback about a behavior. And then I would say like negotiate and vet, like negotiate with people where you stand, have discussions about boundaries and foster that communication. And then vet for people who are looking for similar things, sort of like you said earlier, like don't be afraid to actually go into a situation where you're like, hey, I'm looking for people who also maybe value their independence in a relationship, or I'm looking for people who are really understanding and supportive and who are willing to communicate in a healthy way. And so if you get clear about what you are looking for and vet, and then do some of the inner work first, I think it sets it up for success. I just wanted to pop in here and let you know we are doing a 7-day free trial to the All Access Membership Pass at PDS, which means you get access to literally everything inside of the school. And this includes the 4 live webinars I do with our students every single week. And on top of that, you get access to all of our different courses. We have over 55 different courses on relationships, communication, boundaries, emotional mastery, guilt and shame, learning your needs, so many different facets that are really important to master our lives and feel really good about our lives going forward. And last but not least, there's a daily community event. We have trained facilitators and coaches who are in there doing that work, showing up to support you on your journey every single day. Please join me on the other side. Come check it out. See if it's a fit for you. I'd love to see you there. Go ahead and sign up by clicking the link in the description box below. Welcome back to our last segment of today's episode on Can This Be Fixed? And in this segment, we are going to talk about whether or not a dismissive avoidance request is truly a fair ask. So this question is all about basically an avoidant attachment style wondering if their partner is not accepting them, because they're asking them to really change their behaviors. So I'll read this out loud. So this is from Candy Lecious, and Candy Lecious says, "Is my DA partner's request a fair ask? Hi there, I'm a recovering AP who dated a DA that walked away from the relationship at the 2-year mark for very similar reasons as to what Thais covers in her DA videos. He described that he wanted to be himself, hence the breakup, as he felt the pressures of meeting my needs were making him change and he wanted to retain being himself. For instance, top example he gave is he doesn't know how to respond to texts that most people send him. They sit in his inbox for weeks, months, sometimes forever. And he felt pressured that I didn't feel loved when he did that to me. So his solution was to break up. And he says that he wants to be accepted as he is, these behaviors, quirks, and all. I read that as he would prefer me to not impose my needs onto him. I had been hopeful that even as a DA, things could be healed and possible between us, especially because he maintains wanting to stay in each other's lives and that he still likes me a lot, he says. But I wonder if this is a clear sign that he's simply not ready to participate in a relationship. I also was curious why a DA would choose to work on themselves in the relationship, but others may not." So Mike, do you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, sure. So as we know with DAs, a lot of times they don't really accept themselves for who they are because they have these underlying wounds of feeling defective and there's something wrong with me, like at my core. So I think the big issue here is this person is actually not accepting their own self for who they are. And they're thinking that they need to sort of push someone away to, maintain feeling safe and not having these core wounds sort of flared up and made to feel even worse than they already feel. So basically, I think this person, like, of course, you're allowed being yourself as the partner. Your partner, this person, what's her name? Berrylicious? Coco-licious?
Candylicious.
Candylicious. I love that name. Obviously, you want your partner to be yourself, right? Because everybody wants to come to the table authentically. But this person, I believe, is thinking he can't be who he is at his core because you won't accept that. And you're going to be like, no, that's not what I want. No, this isn't the type of person that I want. So I think the fear is that he's not going to live up to what you want him to be, when really you just want him to be, a loving partner. Yes, there's some things that you ask for and some needs that you're asking to be met. Totally valid, totally cool. But unfortunately, I think this other person thinks by them having to meet your needs means they have to sort of change who they are fundamentally. Or maybe go like above and beyond than what they think they're capable of. So I would just for sure, like, really set out what needs that you want to be met and have a little conversation about it. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, like this is the way it has to be and this is the only way I'll accept. Have a conversation and see, like, is that something you think you can do? Okay, maybe you don't think you can do this all the way. Can you do maybe try halfway and see how it goes? So if you leave the person a little bit of like wiggle room for negotiation and they feel, oh, hey, I have a say in this relationship. Like I'm not, this person who is disempowered and not allowed to speak up for my own needs. If you let them know that it's more of like a negotiation and like a team sort of effort, I really think you get better results that way. And like I said, like when you feel more empowered, you feel, hey, I do have a say. I'm not going to lose all my autonomy and, independence in this relationship. And we could actually work to meet and find a middle ground. So I just think you really need to stress that this person's not losing their authenticity. They're not losing their own personality, but they do maybe need to, have a conversation about some areas that can be worked on. So
I love that. So when you were dismissive avoidant, what did you find you would feel around a situation like this out of curiosity? Like when somebody would come to you and say, hey, Mike, I need you to ABC in the relationship. So like, text back more often or spend more time together. What would you internally feel during those moments?
yeah, like right away, it's kind of immature, but it is insecure attachment style. Right away, feel like I'm being criticized. Right away, I felt like I'm not good enough. You're telling me that I need to be someone different, that the way I am right now is not good enough. And that if I basically don't change, like you're gonna go somewhere else. So there was just so much hurt all in that one request, all tied up into it, thinking I'm defective. You don't like me who I am. Why can't anybody just accept me for who I am? And again, going back to what I mentioned before, it's like, why can't I accept myself for who I am? So you're really getting upset at the fact that you can't accept yourself for who you are. And then now you're thinking this other person who's supposed to like you is now saying, you know what? I like you, but I don't like you the way that you are. So it would just be instant like hurt. And it is kind of hard to get through to someone who is seeing it that way.
And the hardest part, I think, too, is that like if you're the partner of a dismissive avoidant in that moment, you usually can't tell that they're that hurt because they just shut down, right? So they're so stoic, like you don't really know, oh, I'm hurting them. So then you can't even like change or tweak your own behaviors to be more mindful about your delivery or things that give you like some sort of sense of control and, and how you're showing up in the relationship. And the second part is that the avoidant won't like tell you or work through it, right? They'll just tend to be like, okay, this person's hurting me. Let me shut down and pull away. And so the person on the receiving end is like, what is going on? And it's so deeply personalized. And yet the partner who's accidentally hurting their dismissive avoidant partner doesn't even know that they're doing it. And so it's kind of this like tragic cycle in a sense until we come to really learn about these things. I want to add to that too, that a lot of it's like this counterdependency, right? This dynamic of going, if you're an avoidant attachment style, specifically a dismissive avoidant, you don't get much modeling growing up for how to be in a relationship with somebody and compromise around needs. And so because you don't see an exchange of needs and a lot of reciprocity, you don't get the opportunity to be like, okay, I'm going to give to your needs, you're going to give to my needs, and we're going to have this like nice reciprocity happening, and we'll tweak and modify our behaviors to support each other. And so, to really highlight what you said, it's almost like the dismissive avoidant is seeing this as an attack on their character rather than a request to just modify a behavior to make a compromise or to be more considerate of both parties with different needs. And it's something that securely attached people do so well, is exchange needs and compromise and talk it out and find that middle ground. But it's almost impossible to do that when we're taking things so to heart. And when we don't even, have the opportunity to tell somebody, hey, this is hurting me. And I think this is like a really good example of the subconscious mind where, because I know this feeling, having been a fearful avoidant as well. And I've also obviously talked to many dismissive avoidants about this over the years, but I don't think that it's conscious. I don't think the dismissive avoidant sits there consciously and evaluates and says, oh, I'm feeling ashamed. This person's hurting me. And so now I'm going to withdraw. They just feel this emotion and there's this automatic, like autopilot withdraw and shutting down. And then the thoughts that arise that you may be more consciously aware of are actually more about like, questioning the relationship and needing to take space and pull back instead of being like, oh, I see myself shutting down because I feel hurt in this situation. And I should tell the person they're hurting me. Like they're almost like unknowns, because the realization that it even could be a productive conversation is completely out of the conscious mind's awareness. So I'm curious what you think about that.
Yeah, it's totally foreign, and you just don't think you have a voice, and you think the only way to protect yourself is to leave, create space, and come to the conclusion that this person, I don't think will ever love me the way that I want to be loved.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's pretty unfair when your partner has really no idea that they might have struck such a big nerve, right? Like the DAs just don't tend to react on the spot, and they might go away and really, sit there stewing with it. So I would just challenge all DAs out there, just have the conversation. And it's as simple as, hey, when you said XYZ, I just want to let you know that like hurt a little bit. And the reason why it hurt, it made me think that you thought I wasn't good enough, or it made me think that you think that I'm not good enough the way that I am. And I almost guarantee you, like, offering that vulnerability, you're going to hear such like a compassionate answer back, where the person's like, oh my gosh, like I didn't mean it to come across like that. I'm just saying there's an area that I think can be worked on, and I'm asking if there's some room to work with me here. So really, DAs, you just gotta like let them know that when you are hurting, like it's okay to show that you're something hurt a little bit. But if your partner has no clue, they're going to be really like lost and not know to sort of how to handle it for next time. And then it might happen again and again and again.
Yeah.
So really just, I'd be curious to know your experience as well. Have you had that where you had no idea your partner was upset, but then later on you came to find out that you made them feel this way? Has that ever
Yeah.
happened to
So,
rectify?
yeah, when I look at like previous people I dated, or like I guess was in a serious enough relationship to be having like these kind of growth conversations, I didn't have the personal capacity to have those growth conversations in my past somewhat more serious relationships, because I didn't know. I was super fearful, avoidant, and I can relate in that case. Like somebody asks for a need or a request, and sometimes I would be really good about it, but other times if it touched a core wound, I would just shut down and sort of feel, I think if anything, mostly my internal relationship when I was fearful avoidant would have been like, I do so much, I try so hard, like I'm putting so much in, like you think I'm like not doing enough, and I would like sort of almost take it that way, and then be defensive if it was a sore thing, like if it stung a little bit, but in this particular case, like just Graham, my husband, for anybody listening, was mostly dismissive avoidant when we first met, and this is like like 10 years ago coming up on, and for me at the time, it really, he's a part of the reason, like I was doing a lot of work in practice and working with clients, but not so much around attachment styles the first couple of years. And I actually went back and revisited attachment styles somewhat because of him, because I was like, why do we have these like strange situations in the relationship where you just like can't quite seem to like break through? And I didn't realize until I started like really revisiting. And then because I was already in client practice, I had this like amazing opportunity when I started discovering people's attachment styles to also ask them like a million questions that would help them grow and learn, but also help me gain like more insight and like crystallize my understanding of this stuff in the context of what I was already learning. And like I was already working on core wounds and needs and boundaries with people, but not like as it relates to an attachment style. So it helped me sort of like merge those two things together. But with him, it was really helpful for me to realize like, oh, he's sensitive to criticism in a way that isn't showing on his face or in his behaviors, because like I really had no idea. Like I was like, I had no idea that there was a big sensitivity there. And so it was this like big breakthrough in me being extra mindful about my delivery. I didn't have to walk on eggshells, but I could just be like a little bit more mindful about my delivery. And by being more mindful, I would then get my needs met and get heard better. And so it almost went from this like negative vicious cycle in the relationship into a positive vicious cycle instead, and helped us both, I think, get really good at communicating with each other.
Oh, I love that. I love that you guys had that breakthrough. And it's so true. I'm just laughing about that whole, the DA, we have a bit of a poker face, so we can easily, hide that we're really hurt or really upset.
Yeah.
And then you might find out, like, I don't know, a few days later that we're super upset and, stewing at home by ourselves.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, again, just to not harp on it, but like for the DAs, you gotta say something. Just say if something hurt you, it's okay. It doesn't mean you're weak, doesn't mean you're, that it's gonna be very uncomfortable at first, but I guarantee you your partner is gonna be so thrilled that you're opening up and will want to work with you and want to, know for next time of what sort of wounds you have and what sort of makes you feel really, shameful or inadequate. But unless we say those things, your partner really has not much to work with, and that's when you get into problems, when people are just not opening up. So we need you
100%.
to open up more.
So let's take a quick break for our sponsor. Have you ever signed up for a cell phone plan that seemed affordable only to be shocked by how much your bill ends up costing you each month? Because I know that's happened to me. And I feel your pain. Mint Mobile is here to recuse you from those unexpected charges with premium wireless plans starting at just $15 a month. And when they say $15 a month, they actually mean it. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Plus, you can use your own phone and keep your current phone number too. Switch away from overpriced wireless plans and get 3 months of premium wireless access for just $15 a month with Mint Mobile. To get this new customer offer, go to mintmobile.com/Thais, Thais. That's mintmobile.com/Thais, Thais. There's a $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. So I feel like I took us way off the track here for a second, but I guess in the end, Candy Lecius's question is, I had been hopeful that things with a DA could be healed. Because he wants to maintain each other's lives, that he still likes you a lot, but is this a sign he's simply not ready to participate in a relationship? And why do some DAs want to work on themselves and others won't? So Mike, maybe I'll take the first one and you can take the second one. But basically I would say that you said I'd been hopeful that even as a DA, things would be healed and that healing is possible between you two. But to me, the moment he walks out of the relationship and then still says, like, I have feelings and I still like you a lot and I still want to stay in each other's life, to me, it's somebody who wants to engage their feelings without working through their fears. And we know that dismissive avoidants, just like fearful avoidants, are always operating from this kind of like feelings minus fears place. But if the fears are too big, the fears of having to change or work or grow through something, or the fears of not being good enough and taking it to heart and personalizing it, if those things are too big, then it can make it like immovable for somebody, right? Unless that person goes and like gets education and learns what's going on inside of them and starts to understand these patterns, they can kind of stay forever stuck. And so, you see this in here. And to me, when I'm looking at like, okay, are people going to get back together in a relationship? I'm almost always looking at what I think of as like a red to green flag balance. And to me, the fact that he left the relationship puts way more red flags on the scale than green flags. And if it were the reverse, if he was like in the relationship and trying to work it out and maybe having a hard time or not knowing how to work it out, but making that effort, then I would see like more green flags than red flags in that situation. But to me, I wouldn't hold out hope in this situation because he left the relationship and says he still has feelings. And it can honestly put you in a position where, unless that changes, it's going to end up like you get stringed along or strung along, or however you say that in past tense. You'll get strung along, and you may be in a situation where, it's like you're sort of catering to somebody with their fears, but in a way that enables somebody, because when you're really, really worrying about that person's fears, you're not giving them that hard line or that boundary to be able to work through those fears specifically. And so I just think that that's a really important thing to keep in mind. If he came to you and said, hey, I've been working in counseling or therapy or coaching or whatever, and now I've made a huge effort here, then that could be a good, green flag. But at this point specifically, I wouldn't necessarily go into the space of thinking that this could really work because you're not seeing enough green flags to indicate that.
For sure. And just to touch on that question, like why do some DAs want to change and some don't? There could be a variety of answers, but one of them is I think you got to hit a bit of a rock bottom where you're like, enough is enough. Like I see that I'm either feeling hurt all the time in relationships, or I see that I'm hurting people over and over and over. For me, it was actually, I was seeing that I was hurting people over and over and over. And everybody's always like, oh, Mike's the nicest guy. He's so nice. Like, and I always thought I was like a nice guy. Like I was raised by good parents and feel like I have pretty good morals and values. But then I was hurting people and making people not feel good about themselves. So I was like, this is not acceptable. And like when you hurt someone else, you're hurting yourself indirectly. So I was like, I gotta make some changes here because, you know, I don't want to keep having these relationships that end after a year and, you know, end up with someone feeling hurt and really upset. And it just doesn't have to be that way. So I think one of the motivations is kind of hitting a rock bottom where you're like, I've had enough. Let's make some serious changes and let's do this. Then there's the other camp who thinks that they can't change. They think that they're so fundamentally broken and, you know, just they can't be fixed, which is couldn't be further from the truth. I understand, I've been there too, where I felt like, oh, there's no way I can fix my problems. Like I was born this way and I'm just messed up and there's nothing I can do about it. But what I will say for the people that are in that camp, you have to realize, A, you can change like 1,000,000%. Everybody out there can change, but you have to be willing to feel uncomfortable a little bit. You have to be willing to step out of your comfort zone. And that's the trade-off. So, you know, DAs especially, we want to feel comfortable. We want to feel safe and feel good with our creature comforts and not having to be vulnerable. But know that you're not going to heal unless you slowly start to toe the comfort zone line inch by inch.
Yeah.
So realize it is going to be a little bit uncomfortable along the way. But once you do start healing and then you start kind of developing momentum, the healing just kind of starts to really come faster and faster. And then you're like, you feel so good. You're like, wow, I can actually do this. Wow, I'm not a complete like failure in life. So yeah,
I want
just
to
know.
add to that. Sorry to interrupt you, but I want to add to this. And I just want to hear like your take on this. I really believe, and I find this over and over again with all attachment styles, what is initially uncomfortable, first of all, can be at your own pace. It doesn't have to be like go 1,000,000 miles an hour outside of your comfort zone and throw yourself into the deep end, but it can be like slowly but surely, like in increments. But like if you expand your comfort zone, guess what happens? What was originally outside of your comfort zone, if it was a lot of things, is now in your comfort zone. Well, now you're a more comfortable person living in the world. Because if your comfort zone is so, so small, then like so many things will make you feel uncomfortable because they exist outside of that zone. But as you expand your comfort zone, try new things, be more vulnerable, get more comfortable in your own skin, open up more, get more comfortable in interactions with people. Well, now your comfort zone has expanded. And now it's like, less things can make you feel uncomfortable. So you have a net greater sense of comfort over time.
So true. You have to write out the benefits of what you're going to see. It's hard to see it when you haven't been there yet, but just know, like you outlined, you're going to be extending this comfort zone, and then less and less things are going to make you feel uncomfortable. But at first, it is super awkward. Like even something as like even something as like as probably taken for granted by a lot of people is eye contact. A lot of times avoidants, their parents didn't give them that sort of loving eye contact, holding their baby in their arms, soothing them. Even to this day, I have a hard time making eye contact with my mom. I had to work really hard on being able to make better eye contact with people in my life, with loved ones, with relationships, but still with my mom, who is more of the avoidant person in my family. We just didn't have that, and it's still a little bit hard to this day. So just know it's things like that. Like if you do it slowly but surely, like this will probably send people over the edge, but even like eye gazing with your partner is such like an intimacy building exercise. Just start off really small and just look into each other's eyes for like 30 seconds. And you won't believe, right? Like really how it brings you closer together. And then you're cracking up.
Well,
Um,
because I have to share for anybody listening for one
yeah,
second. Mike and I had been friends for like maybe like I don't know, like a year or two, and I brought
yeah,
him to
yeah,
this like workshop with Jacqueline, another friend of ours. And like one of the exercises, this is years ago now, like this is like 10 plus years ago for
yeah.
sure. And one of the first exercises was eye gazing in his workshop, and you eye gaze with one of our business partners at PDS.
Yeah.
And anyways, it was just funny because I was thinking as you were saying that, like, wow, I probably made you feel so uncomfortable when I like, hey, come to this workshop. And one of
It
the
was
first exercises, I didn't know that about you, honestly. I had no idea that that was like an uncomfortable. I would never know. Like you make normal eye contact. I had no idea that was something you like worked on in the past.
huge. I literally like I remember high school and probably my 20s, like it was just really hard to maintain eye contact for longer than like 5 seconds, 10 seconds.
Wow.
So doing that exercise in that workshop, super uncomfortable.
Wow.
But I've done that now many times after, and now it's actually quite like kind of enjoyable to do it.
That's amazing. That's so
Yeah.
cool. Good for
So
you.
it's just things like that, just knowing like these things are uncomfortable and like you can't really bypass the uncomfortableness, but starting somewhere and starting small, like it has to be done. Otherwise, you're gonna stay exactly where you are. And then just think ahead. If I don't change one little bit from now till the end of my life, am I gonna feel fulfilled? Am I gonna feel like I'm living a really rich life and sort of squeezing all the juice that can be squeezed out of this life? So you kind of got to ask yourself that and then, make a decision.
And if you're not evolving, life gets more and more uncomfortable. Like it's not going to get like less. It's not going to be like, okay, my level of comfort stays the same the whole time. Like you'll feel like you're constantly shrinking if you're not growing. I really believe in that too. So
Right, right, right. I
I
know the FAs are loving this right now. They're like, growth, 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 constant growth.
totally.
But, you're going to have your limitations. You're not going to become this, swing to the anxious side and be loving and open with everybody. But even just leveling yourself up a little bit, you're going to see so many positive changes in your relationships. So it's really worth it.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. So we are going to wrap this episode for today. If you want to follow Mike, we will put Mike's information in the show notes down below if you want to stay in touch with him. If you want to jump into PDS, go through our programs, check them out. Of course, we have a 7-day free trial running. I'll put the link in the description down below there as well. So you can check everything out, some of our different courses and programs to heal and change your attachment style fully for free, just for a limited time. And please follow us on Apple, Spotify, iTunes, anywhere that you listen to your podcasts. We will be on there. And if you are listening and instead want to see the video version, you can also check us out on YouTube at Personal Development School. Thanks, everybody. Have an amazing day. See you next week. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Share it with friends and family who are on their journey of personal development and growth, and thank you for listening. Next week, we'll be back with more insights to guide you on your journey. And until then, keep practicing our tools and strategies to change your subconscious mind and apply some of the powerful learnings from this podcast so that you experience real life transformation.